Now, we all know that stock weapons are the best all-rounders. They can go for any situation and handle pretty well on their own. But some weapons are better than others, and some alternatives truly soar above the rest. So today, I figured I'd share my own list of almost necessary alternatives any player should own as soon as possible. Thankfully, a fair amount of these weapons can be obtained through the achievement system, so it's not like newbies are incapable of owning them. I'll note whether or not a weapon is an achievement item for your benefit. Now, to limit the length of the video, I'm going to be drawing a primary, secondary, and melee alternative. They are by no means the best or without fault, just the one I believe any aspiring TF2er should own as soon as possible within that category. Scout was a tough call for me between the Babyface's Blaster, the Force of Nature, and the Soda Popper, but the good old Soda Popper has to be the one that I go for. It's gone through quite a few iterations, from where it used to deal mini crits, to where running increased the meter, to now where it falls in line with most other weapons. I choose it because the mobility, wherever the effect is activated, makes the Scout a terrifying, flying foe. The only reason a Force of Nature didn't make it was that it pushes players back, which lowers its potential damage in the second shot in a fair amount of situations. The Soda Popper is a craft weapon, so you'll have to trade for it. As for the secondary, the Bonk Atomic Punch was a no-brainer for me. While there are some useful utilities like Mad Milk or Criticola, being invulnerable for 8 seconds is enough to easily skirt the back lines or otherwise be a huge nuisance. A bonked scout can easily attract the attention of enemy sentries, making Ubers unnecessary for a coordinated team. The Bonk Atomic Punch is an unlockable weapon, so grab those achievements. Finally, the Holy Mackerel? In all seriousness, this fishy weapon has a dark secret. It's a direct upgrade from stock, as well as the unarmed combat, which is the Halloween reskin. Killing somebody with the fish can confirm whether or not they are actually dead, in addition to being a silly and humiliating weapon. And, as we all know, skin weapons have a super secret increased hidden crit rate. I'm looking at you, Hamshank. The fish in the unarmed combat can be traded for or crafted, and it's not an achievement item. For the soldier, I was originally going to go for the black box, which I'll say is my honorable mention, but the direct hit is just too necessary. The increased damage for a trade-off of considerably less splash range is considerably generous, considering I used that way too many times, the damage stock rockets are capable of. You can take down a level 3 sentry in 2 hits, and even some classes down in 1 hit. Pyro struggle to reflect your projectiles, leading to much less fear of retaliation. Also, the direct hit is unlockable, so go achieve things, go do it. Much as I dislike admitting it given a previous video about the gunboats, I have to recommend them as a secondary. While I encourage many players to go Contra with their team, and I'll put that as my honorable mention, gunboats have their uses on almost every map, letting soldiers get to the front lines or escape from many situations with considerably less damage due to travel. It also helps a lot of players who are new with rocket jumping just to get from place to place and not feel so stressed that they're going to be losing a large portion of health. Gunboats are craft and trade, unfortunately they are not unlocked. As for the melee for soldier, the disciplinary action is, bar none, the best soldier melee around. You might say it's the Market Gardener or the Escape Plan, but it is not, because both are quite gimmicky. For 25% less damage, and let's be honest, if you have to melee somebody as a soldier, you're in a bad position. You gain the perk of increased movement speed whenever you whip an ally. It also has a slightly longer reach than the Eyelander, and there have been hilarious cases on my own where I've melee killed enemies from behind me due to just how silly the disciplinary action's range is. It's a shame the melee range isn't listed on the stats. I guarantee more players would use it if they knew. The disciplinary action can be crafted and traded for, so go grab some metal and go get it. Now, for the Pyro, please don't hate me, but my primary recommendation is the Flog. Now, I know what you're about to say. That weapon? Cosmo, no! You got Backburner, Degreaser, what? Why this? Why this of all weapons? Well, I will tell you for 2 good reasons. The first being that the crits on demand, which can really only be well utilized with the pocket medic or an impressive flank, both which rarely happen with newbies. And number 2, it teaches the godly importance of learning how to air blast. Because once you know about air blasting, you pretty much don't return to the flog, unless you're fooling around. And thankfully, the flog, just super thankfully, is not unlockable. Next is the detonator. And while I would put the reserve shooter simply because it just kills things when they're air blasted, the detonator's mobility potential for pyros is absolutely nuts. Being able to reach locations players wouldn't expect a pyro to be is a game changer, because if you did not know, the detonator is a tiny rocket jumper. Not only that, but it makes your flare shots much more accurate because you can manually detonate the flare. If you think you might miss, just right click to blow it up and boom, you ensure that you hit your target. The detonator, unfortunately, is not unlockable. Now, for the melee of the pyro, the Homewrecker or the Maul reskin is a pyro requirement, although the Power Jack is a very, very close second for me. Even if you're being duped by a good spy, your flamethrower will eventually expose them and you'll get them out of the way. But what if they stab something before you sent them screaming in terror or in death? Well, you can remove that sapper in one swing. It can also do incredible damage to enemy buildings, meaning a medic with an ubered Homewrecker Pyro can clear nests out with unreasonable speed. It's actually quite hilarious to watch. The Homewrecker, much to my dismay, is not unlockable. For the Demo Man, this one is tricky because the Demo Man has some odd primaries. The lock and load has been nerfed and used to be the go-to upgrade. And while it's still great at removing nests, a sticky bomb can usually do it better. So I'm choosing the loose cannon. The knockback can stop incoming Ubers from approaching and otherwise being quite the nuisance of a weapon. Better yet, learning to capitalize on the cannon's timing mechanic can turn you into a powerhouse of mini crits and destruction. The loose cannon cannot be obtained through achievements, and that's sad. However, the secondary alternative that I think every demo man should own would have to be the Splendid screen and not the Charge and Targe. While it's slightly weaker in terms of resistances, it scales much better with Demo Man's fabled melee weapon, the Eye-Lander. There's more damage on a charge hit with additional heads, and it has a 50% increased charge rate, meaning you'll be able to get in and out of situations much faster than a standard Charge and Targe. The Tide Turner just has too little damage resistance and can be prematurely ended if an opponent is wary of you, as damage during the charging reduces the Tide's charge time. The Splendid screen is not achievable, which is both not splendid and not screen-y, I guess. Demo Man, Eye-Lander, I should say enough said, but I'll go ahead and say that with 5 heads taken for maximum potential, a Demo Knight is no laughing matter, even if he's constantly drunkenly laughing at you, sorry. Now, I say 5 heads because the sword itself maxes out at 4 heads, but with a shield becomes maximum powered with its charge at 5 heads, so that's what you should be going for. Extended range and just slightly slower movement speed than a scout's at maximum potential, it wouldn't be unheard of for a demo man to collect the 5 heads with this weapon and then change out of his shield for a sticky launcher at spawn to be an even more terrifyingly threatening force. And the Eye-Lander is an achievement weapon, so go kill some things, you demo man crazy lads, you! Now, the Heavy really only has one thing that I'm going to talk about, because the other 2 are going to be painfully obvious, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about them. The Tomislav for the Heavy I personally consider a straight upgrade to the minigun. It's not due to the faster windup speed or the increased accuracy, it's because the dang thing is silent. And given how loud the stock minigun is, a silent weapon for Heavy, aside from when he's firing, is a godsend for ambushing classes and giving them very little time to prepare for the onslaught you're surely about to give them. While it does fire 20% slower, meaning it will take slightly longer to kill them and you will be at a disadvantage against other heavies in close combat situations, the ambush aspect in a wide variety of scenarios easily makes up for this. The Tomislav is, as it should be, a silent wind in the night, and it cannot be achieved, but otherwise obtained. Just as the Mafia would have wanted it. For your secondary heavy sandwich, enough said. I will say that I don't see enough players grabbing a med kit to refill their sandwich. Why aren't you doing this? Do more. Also, sandwich, unlockable, just unlock it. Sandwich, it changes the game. And finally, for heavy's melee, gloves of running urgently because I don't have anything against the fists of steel, and they are useful in some situations. The killing gloves of boxing are a hilarious thing if you can get them to work correctly. But just gloves of running urgently, you need mobility as the heavy. You need that the most, so that's what I gotta go with. Unfortunately, it is not the gloves of running urgently that are unlocked, it is the killing gloves of boxing. Now, as for the engineer, the rescue ranger has to be one, if not one of the best shotguns for keeping a sentry alive, and I would dare to say the strongest alternative to the engineer shotgun, simply because it allows you to leave your sentry within your sightlines and still be okay instead of turtling all day. It makes engineer more fun, even if the damage with the gun itself is absolutely miserable. If you pair yourself up with a pistol, the rescue ranger is a fine thing to keep. You'll still get a kill or two sometimes, but just do it to discourage enemies from approaching, and not sincerely aim to kill somebody. It's rarely gonna happen. The rescue ranger is not an achieve item, so you'll have to get it through a different method. Now, for the engineers, secondary, the wrangler, fantastic. It's wonderful. It allows you to deal damage with pesky enemies that are out of your sentry's range and makes your machine much stronger for it. It also allows engineers who are crafty enough to use their sentry to mobilize them with sentry jumping. Sentry jumping is an incredibly important skill for an engineer, as getting a sentry in a place where it normally wouldn't be or shouldn't be is undoubtedly one of the strongest advantages of a wrangler. And you can bet your sweet bacon the wrangler is an unlocked weapon. Yeah! Now, as for the melee, I really should say Southern Hospitality, so I'm going to. While the Jag is a very close second, the Southern Hospitality makes the spy checking a breeze, an easy task, with no other penalty other than you become more vulnerable to fire, which, if you're being caught on fire by pyros, I don't know if you're doing the whole engineer thing correctly, or if they're just a good pyro, who knows. You lose out on random crits, but again, you get bleeding. Sadly, this item cannot be gained through achievements. Now, I would be saying Gunslinger as the alternative melee, but that's for another video entirely. Now, the medic, for his primary, the needle guns have always been silly. They do the least amount of damage, and while a blood soldier can work in maps with very little wiggle rooms or some choke points, the Crusader's crossbow will always be an almost necessary alternative. Why? Because originally I was going to do a video on why it's so good. I didn't know, because I didn't really have enough to talk about that would make it video worthy in my opinion. So here we are. It supports medics staying on the back lines, it supports two styles of healing, instant and pocket heals, and knowing when to use which, and has increased damage over longer distances, which no other weapon does. It's just great. I would dare to say almost to never use the Blood Soldier or the Overdose, but some players are terrible with crossbow shots, and I'm not the best with them either sometimes. So, you do you. But it's a crime that this weapon cannot be unlocked, as the Crusader's crossbow sincerely deserves it more than the Blood Soldier. Almost necessary alternative medigun I would choose is a tough one, as all mediguns are quite powerful. But I would have to recommend the Kritzkrieg. It's a powerful side grade from stock, having increased charge rate and a taunt that can keep medics alive from afterburn. That's right, the Kritzkrieg taunt gives you health. You should do that when it's safe and to heal yourself. Also, pairing up with a soldier or a heavy or demo or almost any class with a Kritzkrieg leads to the enemy team's destruction, sometimes in ways invulnerabilities simply cannot match. Just don't use it to clear sentry nests because it won't happen. Sentries and buildings cannot be affected by critical damage. It just won't happen. So just stop that. Thankfully, the Kritzkrieg can be unlocked through achievements, so go grab your medical license and then lose it, because science isn't bound by a license. Just use your imagination and kill them with criticals. Now, as for his melee, I want to give the Ubersaw the light, but I just cannot. The Amputator is just too useful and saved my hide on multiple occasions in the way that the Ubersaw will almost never do. The increased healing when the weapon is active has saved me from fire, bleeding, and just the occasional fleeing from my life. Additionally, when a fair sum of your teammates are damaged and within close proximity of you, the taunt will heal all allies within your brief vicinity. This can sometimes out-heal mediguns, so it's advised to do this when you have a group of people. Now, if you're out having to melee things as medic, I don't think you're really supporting the team in the way that you could be. And I get that you get in situations where you get in trouble, but if you're actively seeking people as the medic with the Ubersaw, you're just playing it dangerously and you're not being useful, unless you're doing a medi-chain. However, the Amputator can keep you alive in a lot more solo situations, which is why I have to recommend it as the alternative. Unfortunately, the Amputator is not obtained through in-game achievements, so you'll have to run from death a different way until you gain it. Second to last class, here we go with the Sniper! This video is about side weapons I believe that are almost necessary to own, and I could not give it to any other weapon than the Sydney Sleeper? Wait, the body-shotting sniper rifle? Yeah, the body-shotting... the body-shot weapon. And you heard me correctly. This weapon is for snipers everywhere because it has a pretty darn strong advantage that other sniper rifles don't have. It cannot headshot. And you might say to me, whoa, Cosmic Afro, that's not an advantage. What are you, stupid? No. As explained to me by my friend Mary, not giving up your position as a sniper is just as strong. Since Girardi is now applied in a field effect when the scope is built up enough, it means the enemy team will be taking a lot more damage, a lot more often, and they'll be discouraged from going into open sites where they might think you are. It's also the advantage because if you're not killing people, the enemy team has a harder time figuring out where you are, and that can be much more advantageous than simply just headshotting people because people will just kind of know. The Sydney Sleeper cannot be found through achievements, unfortunately. I should also mention that the Sydney Sleeper is a wonderful alternative for snipers that are just bad at aiming but the team desperately needs one. As for the secondary sniper, Girardi fires mini-crits. Enough said. It's unlock, achieve, win, just get it. We all know the Girardi, okay? For the melee for sniper, the Bushwhacker is the one that I have to go for, absolutely. But I rarely ever go on a meleeing sniper streak anyways. If you're in a situation where you have to manually, or where you have to hit somebody with your melee, you're just doing it wrong as a sniper. Unless you know this. You see, anytime you have a situation where a sniper would normally mini-crit, it is now a full crit, and this does not apply to just Girardi. The heavy-wearing gloves of running urgently, any fan of war target, or perhaps the best of them all, attaching it or using it with the Cleaner's Carbine. When you activate the Cleaner's Carbine's Crikey meter, and I know that sounds so silly, the effect is also applied to the Bushwhacker. Now, the Crikey meter means that you'll be doing mini-crits, but that means that the Bushwhacker will be doing auto-crits for the next 8 seconds if you can get it down. Oddly enough, this weapon cannot be obtained through achievements, nor can any other sniper melee. The sniper has 2 secondary achievements, probably to encourage you not to melee or something since you're a sniper. And finally, the Spy. If you've watched this long, I salute you, as this has been one heck of a long video. I have to give the primary award to the weapon that rewards the Spy for playing the Spy properly. The Diamondback is a necessary tool of destruction and terror for spies who are actually backstabbing and or sapping buildings of enemy engineers. You are rewarded with critical shots upon getting a backstab or sapping a building all the way down. The Ambassador can be a headshot weapon, but there's a slight cooldown and is a silly side grade that doesn't feel much like a spy to me. It feels like a downgrade to Sniper in most instances, but that's my opinion on the matter. The Ambassador is my second choice if I had to give one, especially since the Ambassador is the unlockable weapon and it's not the Diamondback. I think that's unfortunate, I think that's a crime, because the Diamondback, it looks and sounds cooler too, but we'll just say that's fine. Now, as for the knife, the Big Earner is probably my go-to, no, not probably, is my go-to alternative at the moment. While it does reduce your maximum health to a dangerous 100, meaning that rockets can potentially one-shot you, the increased movement speed upon kill and refilled cloak meter means you can get in and out and also make chain stabbing far more effective because of how fast you're moving after that first kill. It makes backstabbing feel incredibly rewarding and that adrenaline rush with every kill. Unfortunately, no new knives can be gained through achievements, which is a pity, such a shame. As for the watch, I personally dislike the Cloak and Dagger. I think it makes for lazy spies, uncreative spies, and idle spies, which is something I don't really appreciate. No, I have to go with the only other one by default, and that would be the Dead Ringer. While it has been nerfed down in the recent years, the Cloak and Dagger makes appropriate use of the friendly disguise function that I think most spies don't even know exists, at least in pubs. The additional movement speed buff when you're feigning death initially is a strong attribute that should not be ignored. Both the Cloak and the Ringer can be gotten through achievements, you lucky bums. And finally, the Sapper! There's only one alternative, the Red Tape Recorder! Yay! And what makes it a great alternative, the only alternative, is that it takes longer to kill a building, which becomes much stronger in the sense that an engineer cannot detonate a slowly sapping building, which means in many cases will delay them from setting up in their next spot if you manage to kill them and leave it sapped instead of shooting their buildings down with a revolver. It's probably not the best pick with a Diamondback though. In addition, it downgrades a building, meaning the engineer has to find metal and the time to build his arsenal back up, and it makes it easier for your team to take down the enemy engineer buildings if you just can't manage to do it yourself. Unfortunately, it is not unlockable. Whew, good golly gosh, this was a long one, but I thank you all for joining me on this one. Now, the weapons I have mentioned, again, are not for every scenario, nor do I believe they are the best. I do think they are the almost necessary weapons to own though. So I think you should try and get these weapons as soon as possible if you can manage it. Or in the Flog's case, save it for as long as you can. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching and please stay tuned because more will be coming your way. Bye bye. Woo!